Names have been changed to protect the privacy of the living and the departed who are not present to speak for themselves. What does happiness feel like? Does it feel like being small, lying down in the back of a station wagon, feeling the car speed along the summer highway, watching clouds out the window, the top half of other cars gliding by, the tops of trees? Chapter 1. Keep it together, Karen, old kid, old sock. July 3rd, 2019. It's Wednesday, July 3rd. Every day since Sunday, I start the day the same way. First, I have some crushing anxiety really early in the morning. Then I pray and try to meditate. Haven't ever gotten much out of meditation, but I persevere. Then I most likely have some skitters, as we used to call it at our house growing up, or diarrhea, as it's more commonly known. Then I come back to my bed feeling calm-ish again. I play on my word scramble app on my phone, level 3000 and something, yo. Scroll around a bit through social media, and then I go back to sleep. Oh, I usually cry first thing in the morning as I move and groove at the anxiety party, but I didn't do that today. Huzzah! Tired now. Back to sleep. Friday, December 13th, 2019, 1:04 p.m. I'm sitting here in my living room. Quiet house, peaceful day, sounds of the furnace blowing softly through the vents every now and again. I can hear the fan of my computer here on my lap. Today's my day off, so I don't have to go anywhere or do anything if I don't want to. It's technically a scene of perfect peace, but it's taking everything in me to not cave into the invitation to lose my fucking mind. My legs want to start to shake and shiver again. Breathing wants to increase. I want to dive under all my blankets, curl into a ball, and shiver until I have a merciful stroke or a benevolent heart attack. I want to fucking lose my shit. No, I don't. I want to continue to dig myself with a metaphorical teaspoon out of a mountain of anxiety I didn't even realize I was burying myself under until about a week ago. Oh wait, that's not completely true. I'd been making jokes for months, maybe even years, that I'm a nervous wreck. I was functioning with flying colors through constant, ready to teeter off the edge sensibilities. I thought I just super hated Mondays. Big deal. Doesn't everybody hate Mondays? I thought I was doing adequate self-care, working out regularly, nutrition slightly shitty, but better than the end of summer. I thought I just needed more time to heal. Well, time's up, time to deal. I hate that rhymed just now, but I'll let it stand. Yesterday I went to see my doctor. Again. To make a long, boring story short, I seem to have super cranked my neck and upper back while working out about a month ago. So, my doc checked me over and said my mobility was fine, and since I wasn't experiencing any pain during the examination, she wasn't too concerned. I had taken one of those super painkillers you can get over the counter beforehand. Anyway, that intense pain eventually faded, but every time I tried to work out, my neck and shoulder area would seem to twang up again, and I felt some weirdness on one side of my face. Then I started to feel like I had a dizzy head from time to time. Well, that completely dumped my fucking bucket, and mild anxiety ramped right up to full-blown panic attacks. Neck feeling weird, occasionally dizzy, waking up bathed in sweat, finding all kinds of delectable possibilities for my deterioration or demise online, freaking out more. So, back I went to my doc. She thoroughly checked me over and said I probably had a pinched nerve at one point that had cleared up, but noted that I have extremely tight muscles in my back. She ruled out anything being squashed in my spine or neck because I would have pain if that were the case. She recommended therapeutic massage and going for therapy in the new year, feeling certain that it was all anxiety related. What can I say? My doctor has become acquainted with my every few months, please tell me I'm not dying visits. Oh, there was that time that I had a cyst on my hoot years ago that had to be further looked into, that inspired a tearful and dramatic wailing, with my sister there for support, that, if it's cancer, just take it off! Just take the whole breast right off! Doc calmed me down and gently guided me to not jump to the worst. And speaking of therapy, there was that time there was a white dot on the side of my tongue, and oh boy, did I lose my marbles over that. I was losing it all over the place on the inside over that dot. Then my nose started to vibrate, like it started to buzz. It wouldn't stop buzzing. I was discreetly applying cortisone lotion to it a few times a day, but it just kept intermittently humming. Googled it. The internet told me I had a horrible autoimmune disease. Immediately felt that dynamic, swooning mix of hot, cold, and sick. So I kept searching through the internet and somehow miraculously found a page that listed a lot of fun and delightful bodily symptoms that can pop up thanks to anxiety. I was so relieved. It even became kind of funny. I referred to it as my click-on stress nose, like that plastic potato guy toy who has a variety of face parts you can click on or off. Doc gently reminded me again to avoid diagnosing my symptoms with Dr. Internet. She gave me a business card for a therapy place that happened to be within walking distance of where I live. So I had the dot sliced off my tongue and sent to the lab, and everything was fine. And then I went for my first, and at this point in time, only trip to a therapist. I didn't find my session very inspiring. Nice lady. Spent the first 10 minutes lamenting how stressful her life had been lately. I did get some good pointers for mindfulness and mindful breathing at least. So it was mildly helpful, but clearly I was spiraling back down again. This most recent appointment concerning my weird, crank neck is when my doctor looked at me with great sympathy and kindness and said, "Maybe this is the year you conquer your anxiety for good." For good? Whoa. My anxiety? Ah, my anxiety. Yes. I guess the tipping point was Hubs. My husband was sick for almost all of 2019, having health problems from Christmas of 2018 until March 2019, and then being actively, terrifyingly, unceasingly sick from March until an insane crescendo at the very beginning of September. It all started with some digestive issues after eating the big kinds of junk food meals we all love on the weekends. He'd get this awful indigestion with so much burping and wanting to throw up. Then he did throw up one day. Horrifying. I had my own gallbladder yanked out through my belly button back in 2005. Gallstone attacks were unbelievably scary and painful. I was glad to see it go. An ultrasound in the new year confirmed that Hubs did indeed have gallstones, even though he never experienced the debilitating pain that I had with my attack. Next step was to see a surgeon in March. In the meantime, we just had to be really careful with his diet. Or try to. We were really careful until St. Patrick's Day. I think this was all my fault. I know Hubs is stubborn, and Hubs is going to do what Hubs wants to do, but we were having a fun day. I made corned beef hash and soda bread. It was delicious. I'm not Irish, but I love me a holiday. Before dinner, we enjoyed an Irish whiskey. Hubs has always been a take-it-or-leave-it guy with booze, but he did enjoy a nice little drink from time to time. Timeline gets fuzzy now. I don't know if it was that night he started to feel sick or the next night. I can't remember now. He started to throw up, and for the first time he had horrible pain. I thought, oh no, he's having a gallstone attack. I knew those were horrendous, but usually lasted a couple of hours. But he kept being sick. He was sitting on the kitchen floor with his back against the cupboards, almost trying to be in a meditative state to get through the pain. Vomiting brought no relief. I would come out to rub his back and see if he was okay in between barf sessions, and then I would go back to our room, climb into bed, and shiver with fear when he would be sick again. Finally, around 3 o'clock or so in the morning, I decided enough was enough, and we had to go to the hospital. Thankfully, my kids are old enough to be left on their own. I got myself dressed, got Hubs ready to go, got his wallet, got a couple of plastic bags, grabbed his thyroid pills, grabbed a blanket, got him into the car, and headed off in the black night with no other cars on the street to the hospital. Someone was on our side that night, though. There was nobody else in the emergency waiting room when we arrived. We got him registered, and then we sat and waited. He was in agony. Then another guy, about the same age, came in. He was holding his side and clearly in pain. He came and sat right near us after he was registered. I don't know what his issue was, but all I know was I was stuck between two guys who were moaning and in agony. Oh my God, that was when my anxiety began to really rise. I felt the panic want to drown me, but there was nowhere I could go. I had to be there. Shortly, Hubs got taken in to be seen by a nurse as we waited for the doctor. We gave our details of what had happened again. He has gallstones, blah, blah, blah. We ate a fatty meal, and he had one alcohol drink, and we were waiting to see the surgeon later in March, etc., etc. She started blood work and got permission from the doctor to give him pain medication and anti-nauseants. It's fuzzy. I tried to forget this stuff. The doctor came in at one point. Very nice, very calm, sympathetic. He surmised right away that Hubs was having an attack of pancreatitis, that a gallstone had unfortunately become lodged in the bile duct between gallbladder and pancreas. This would cause intense pain. Maybe that's when he was allowed to have pain meds. At any rate, Hubs had gone inward hours ago to deal with this. I was basically on my own. I would be in this on my own state for the most part of the next 6 months. I remember feeling absolutely suffocated by the fear. It reminded me of when I found out that my mom, who was in the hospital, was more than just sick. I remember having such panic, such terror. It was even different from when my boyfriend had cancer nearly 20 years before. I think at 18 I still had some youthful resilience, some helpful obliviousness and lack of gravitas. But I guess I'll be talking more about that. That fear, that massive, humongous fear that you can't run away from. You can't run away from it because it is inside you. It's not in a part of your house and then you just go into another room. It's right there in your mind, your body, in every fiber of your being, and it's big. It's huge. You don't know what to do with it. You don't know where to put it. You don't know how you'll survive it, but you do. Then I had that fear again with my dad, 3 years after Mom, that day we went to see the specialist. So after all that, I was afraid of the hospital. I thought it was just a place where doctors told you they were sorry, but there was nothing they could do. And then, that person you love so goddamn much, they die. And maybe you'll find yourself, a decade later, casually rooting through your mom's makeup bag that you couldn't part with to see if there's a nail file in there because, damn, Mom was organized. Hey, can we talk about makeup bags for just a sec? Is there anything more fucking personal than a woman's makeup bag? A purse is a big one too. And for men, I'd say that drawer in their dresser they fill with random treasures, check stubs, when those existed, random receipts, old versions of paper money, hand-drawn, child-made cards. Yeah, that's pretty damn personal too. That makeup bag that has its own makeup baggy smell as soon as you open it. It's somehow wholesome. A scent of lipsticks and liquid makeup, eyeliner pencils, an eyeshadow with a worn-out, disintegrating little sponge applicator, eyeshadow used almost down to the bare pan beneath. A spare mascara, new and still in its packaging. I can immediately be transported back to the bathroom, watching Mom put on brown eyeshadow, doing her hair with the curling iron in one hand and a cigarette smoldering away in the ashtray on one side of the sink. She'd pause to take a puff in between sections of hair curling. I loved watching her beauty regimen. So, I was talking about terror. Big, bad, suffocating, strangling, chokeable fear. I had hoped so hard that I wouldn't have to go through that again after my parents. I had said many times, conversationally to Hubs, that the trick was to just stay out of the damn hospital system. Stay out of the hospital and you will be all right. Don't get into that hard-to-escape labyrinthine system of tests, and more tests. And there we were, right smack dab where I feared to be most. Does it sound more exciting if I call it my heart of darkness or in the belly of the beast? Well, whatever. Dress it up with whatever bells and ribbons you like. It was my bad place. Okay, I guess the hospital is everyone's bad place. I'm not extra special. Hubs, thankfully, was starting to relax. He had an IV in and was getting pain meds and anti-nauseants. He had thrown up a lot. I think he may even have been sleeping, that awful kind of mercy sleep of exhaustion or drugs. The nurse came back with a wheelchair. She was pretty, light brown skin, hair in an attractive messy bun on top of her head, very soft-spoken voice. She was chatting with another nurse about Hubs. Yeah, I'm taking him to a new room. His bloods weren't very good. She said that casually, with a note of sympathy and regret in her voice. His bloods weren't very good. I wheeled straight on over to the washroom and had immediate diarrhea. We were moved to a new room in the heart of the emergency room metropolis. Hubs was getting pain meds and anti-nauseants, and he was not allowed to drink anything. If one is experiencing acute pancreatitis, they need to calm that pancreas down right away. Hubs doesn't remember that night after he arrived at the hospital. I remember being in that room with him, and every time a bag would empty on the machine that had been pumping fluids and meds into him, it would beep and beep and beep and beep and beep, and after a while, if no one came, it would beep and beep and beep and beep. And there were many, many other rooms with people who were horribly sick, and they too had that machine that would beep and beep, and nobody would come to their room either right away, and then it would beep, 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 and it would drive everybody insane except for the doctors and nurses who had obviously learned to tune it out because they were busy. There were people in there with horrible coughs. There were people in there who burp and burp like Hubs. Big, ugly burps. There were people in there who wailed, "Hello? Hello?" from unknown corners. There were people in there who shit themselves. I fell asleep on a chair with my head against the wall, using my wadded-up hoodie as a pillow for a bit. I had purchased hospital Wi-Fi so I could stay in touch with my brother and sister, and then copy and paste those updates for Hubs' family. I quickly learned it was best, after a doctor came by, to type that confusing info out once, and then just copy and paste it for everyone else. Hubs was so hot and sweaty. I kept getting icy washcloths to run over his back. That seemed to give him some comfort. He was heavily medicated, though. He didn't say much. I went home about 14 hours after we'd first arrived to see the kids and make them dinner. That might have been the night I cried and cried and cried and cried, and the kids thought I was a bit amusing, but they were hugging me. That was 2 weeks in the hospital. Things finally calmed down, and Hubs started on a liquid diet. At first, he was so excited for Jell-O. Then he hated Jell-O and juice not long after. We saw various doctors. One of them, a cold, Eastern European woman with zero bedside manner, told us that part of Hub's pancreas had necrotized. Necrotized! Horror word! What does that mean? Part of it had died off. This was common, apparently. In some cases, we were told, there could be a complication of a cyst developing on the pancreas. Hopefully, that wouldn't happen. Well, that happened. Hopefully, the cyst would just go away in time. The surgeon came by eventually and said, after many, many scans along the way, that the gallstone that had created the storm had passed. It was not stuck any longer in the bile duct. He said that pancreatitis is like a heart attack of the tummy. They don't like to operate on the pancreas unless they have to because it is a very, very serious organ. If at all possible, they like to leave it to heal alone. Hubs was doing well enough though, and he was given the okay after some time had passed to eat solid foods. I was at home when my teenage son said that Dad had sent him a text with a picture of his dinner. Oh, that's good. Let's see. I took a look. His first solid meal, mere days after nearly croaking from acute pancreatitis, was spaghetti and meatballs. The picture made it look like he had a plate full of meatballs. I couldn't help myself. I said out loud, "Spaghetti and fucking meatballs!" And then I started crying. My son became alarmed. "What? Is that bad? Is that junk food? Oh no, Dad's eating junk food, isn't he? Is he eating junk food? Is he going to get sick again?" I had to reel it back in. No, he'll be okay. He's in a safe place if he feels sick, and they'll be able to help him. Hubs, for his part, was delighted by his first solid meal and highly defensive when I freaked. He insisted the meatballs were tinier than they appeared in the photo and rather dry, so hopefully lowish in fat. After trekking to and from the hospital nearly every single day except maybe one, Hubs finally got to come home. I was exhausted. I had formed a nice little routine of going to the hospital, coming home, cleaning the house, making dinner, packing the kids' lunches for school, doing laundry or anything else needed, freaking out at nighttime, crying, praying, having nightmares, getting up the next day, packing healthy things for me to eat while I was at the hospital, and packing pear juice and lemon water for Hubs. It was a blur of scans, terror that there would be bad news, utter relief when there wasn't, loneliness that Hubs on painkillers was almost completely emotionally detached, that he had to get through this, and I felt like my partner was unavailable to me. I would be at home frantically looking up online articles that would advise me what foods were good to heal the pancreas. Felt like I was a functioning headless chicken, if that makes sense. The plan was that eventually, once the pancreas had completely calmed down and Hubs had a chance to heal, the gallbladder would be removed. Hubs was massively bloated, swollen, distended, third trimester stomach kind of bloated. I had to push him to get up and go for walks to get that swelling out of his legs. His arms were puffy from constant IV fluids. There were a couple of really bad nights for me while he was in the hospital. The first one was early on in the days when he was still in emergency. I was at home and it was evening time. Hubs sent me a text and casually said, "Yeah, they're worried about my breathing." He'd been put on oxygen for a small period. I asked him what that meant. What was the matter? He never texted back. A few hours later, and still no text. It was time for bed, and still nothing. I had sent him a couple more texts. No reply. Tried to call his phone. No answer. I tried to go to bed. Still no text. 1:30 in the morning, I called the hospital and got connected with the night nurse who was looking after him. I asked if Hubs was okay. The guy was so casual. "He's fine. He's sleeping," he said, like I was a paranoid freak. I barely choked out a "thank you" before I completely dissolved into sobbing. Do you enjoy involuntarily crying on the phone to a stranger as much as I do? I was relieved, shaky, completely ruined, and also angry. I tried as nicely as possible, when I saw Hubs next, to ask to never drop a statement like that and disappear again. The other time was when he had eaten one of his solid food meals, and he said he felt a bit funny after he'd finished. I texted back asking for clarification. What's the matter? No answer. I don't think he answered again until early the next morning. Something like, "Just gas. Better now." God, I was a wreck. Eventually, he got to come home. We were given a printout for a low-fat diet that I would need to be mindful of. We did not want to wake up that gallbladder again. There were still stones in there. We had to heal the pancreas first so we could get that gallbladder fucker yanked out. Incredibly, he'd lost nearly 30 pounds while being in the hospital in 2 weeks. His stomach was still massive and bloated. We thought, though, that all Hubs needed was time and he would heal. Good Lord, were we wrong. We would spend the next 5 months going through a total roller coaster of stress and confusion. Hubs wasn't healing very well. He was only able to eat tiny, toddler-sized meals at a sitting. This was a guy who is 6'3" and was about 275 pounds before all this business happened. Anything more than the tiniest meal and he felt sick. We would do well for a few weeks, and then he was reaching for a plastic bag to throw up in. Once he started to get sick, it did not stop. He was back in the hospital that night before my birthday in April to get fluids for dehydration and anti-nauseants to stop the vomiting. He came home on my birthday and we were both wrecked. A little interlude. When I was 9, I went to Girl Guides for nearly a year. I did not enjoy it. I think it was Mom's friend's idea. She also had a daughter, and either that daughter wanted to sign up for guides or her mom thought it was a good idea. But at any rate, I was cajoled into joining too. A shy kid who never seemed to have any confidence. Mom probably thought this would be good for me. Parents always think the best way to help a shy, reserved kid is to stick them in activities. Maybe that works for some kids. I don't know. It never worked for me. So I was lucky we weren't much of an activities family. Wait a minute, come to think of it now. I was plunked into 4 activities at various stages of my kidhood, and my siblings only got shipped off to 1 each. If nursery school counts, I guess you could say my sister tried too. I'm feeling like I got a bit of a shit deal there. But as I was saying, I was in guides for a year. One reason I didn't like it was because Mom's friend was always late dropping Kay and I off. We always had to sheepishly tiptoe in right in the middle of the opening prayer. Being late for things was not my thing. Another challenge was that I was not often comfortable around other girls generally when I was a kid. I often found them kinda mean. I had a solid pack of girlfriends all through elementary school, but otherwise it was a bit of a struggle. Also, Mom was, shall we say, frugal. She thought it was a waste of money to buy a guide's uniform, so I never really fit in that regard, schlepping in my running shoes, shirt, and corduroy pants. As soon as we found out uniforms weren't an absolute requirement, Mom was fine with that. And finally, I've always hated crafts. Kids love crafts generally. I've always been the kind of kid who doesn't really enjoy what other kids enjoy. In fact, as an adult, I don't generally enjoy what a lot of people think of as fun. I do still have my Christmas ornament from Guides, a pipe cleaner star threaded with yellow and brown beads. Very late 70s, early 80s. We had a Guides sleepover party one night in the winter. I thought it sounded exciting. I had to borrow my uncle's sleeping bag because back in those days, you just might not have that stuff in your house. And also, Mom probably thought there was no reason to have one just for the sake of having one. Mom did not think it sounded exciting. She thought sleeping anywhere other than your own bed was generally terrible. So before I even went, there was lots of, "Why do you want to do that? That sounds horrible. You won't be able to sleep. Would you rather just be home in your nice cozy bed?" Guides was at the parish hall next to the church my family kinda went to when I was young. There was a girl in our group, a couple of years older, very pretty. That long blonde hair that's just naturally good. Kind of hip already at a young age. She brought Blondie records with her for the evening. I brought the teddy bear that I still stick under my arm every night when I go to sleep. I was running happily up and down the room, tossing Ted up into the air and catching him. She was staring at me. I looked at her. "You're weird," she said with disgust. I didn't say anything. The only other thing I want to say about Guides, and that sleepover in particular, was that I was the only kid who couldn't sleep all night, freezing on that hard linoleum floor in my thin sleeping bag. The next morning for breakfast we had scorching, molten hot chocolate in styrofoam cups and powdered donuts. 1980s breakfast of champions. Ah, the good old days. I burnt the shit out of my tongue on that hot chocolate. I'm weird. Yes, I am. Fucking right. And you know what? I'm good with that now. But I think I wasn't good with that for a long time, and I lamented it. I lamented that I didn't fit in like everyone else in that sense, and that even out with friends, and at parties, I often felt different, like an outsider. And that's part of the reason I love my family so fiercely. We were weird. All of us were weird or eccentric or whatever word you want to use. And that's where I felt so comfortable because that was my tribe. That's where we all had quirks. And that felt so familiar and good.